So in these unprecedented times, staying informed is more important than ever. Transportation professionals are being called to do more with less, and we have to be nimble to react to these ever-changing conditions. So we can certainly utilize old data and lean on previous travel models and surveys, but we know that the assumptions from 2019 will not necessarily hold true in 2020. And of course, travel patterns are continuing to change and evolve nearly every month. So we need to be able to access on-demand data to track these trends, and that's paramount to making critical transportation planning decisions so that we can continue to provide safe and equitable transportation service for everyone. So before we jump into the excellent presentations prepared by our speakers, Christian and Steve, I'm going to briefly highlight a few features developed by StreetLight to help enable transportation practitioners to monitor these changing travel patterns, all while staying at home. So as some of you may already be aware, StreetLight currently offers a VMT monitor that tracks daily metrics of vehicle miles traveled. It does this at the county level across the lower 48 states. With all the volatility surrounding travel during this really unprecedented time, tracking VMT could be a useful way for planners to understand travel trends, especially as stay-at-home orders are implemented and then relaxed. It can be a great way to anticipate revenue shortfalls related to gasoline consumption, as well as determining other externalities such as impacts on pollution in the environment and greenhouse gas emissions. So to learn more about the VMT monitor and to view these county level metrics that are updated 3 times weekly, feel free to visit our website at streetlightdata.com. So let's dive into the VMT monitor and look at some of this county level data that's been aggregated, in this case for the entire state of New Jersey, so that we can understand changes in VMT in response to the various closures and reopenings that have been influenced by the impacts of COVID-19. So the blue bar chart represents daily statewide vehicle miles traveled in New Jersey, tracked over time between January and July. Note that we do have the most kind of up-to-date current data to about 3 days before the present, but the chart I pulled here is a little bit older. You'll also see that yellow dashed line, or orange dashed line, that represents a 5-day moving average to help kind of track the general trend. So in the winter months, VMT is pretty consistent and follows kind of the expected typical travel trends for weekday and weekend travel. But you can see at the outset of COVID-19 in early March, there is a spike in VMT prior just to that declared state of emergency. Presumably maybe that's additional grocery runs or last minute travel. So you can see right after that, what follows is a really dramatic drop in VMT with March travel down, around 60% statewide from those January averages. And this impact is even more dramatic if you actually go and look at those urbanized areas, such as Hudson or Essex counties. But somewhat, predictably, as the economy begins to reopen and some of these stay-at-home and shelter-in-place orders are relaxed, we start to see an upward slope and steady uptick in VMT, both in New Jersey and elsewhere across the country during the summer months. And in many areas, we're seeing that VMT approach 90% of the previous summer average. So especially in the tri-state area, there are 2 competing trends. One being continued telework, which is driving travel down, but also travelers are now replacing their transit commute trips with single occupancy vehicles or driving cars. So, again, not surprising in the summertime, people are itching to get out. So we're seeing also a higher number of road trips in the summer in lieu of air travel, or in this case, trips to the shore. So again, we'll kind of continue to monitor these trends over time. So we can look at these same sort of trends. I won't go into much detail because they're about the same in New York State as a whole. And then if you click forward, we'll also see it in Connecticut. But note that you can get this information on our VMT monitor at a county-wide level. So the StreetLight Insight platform can also be used to analyze the impacts of COVID-19 on those commute journeys to work. There's a feature in our platform called Zone Activity Analysis, and this basically allows users to look at an area of interest and then scan outwards to determine, at a neighborhood level, what are the home locations, what are the work locations for devices that are present in a particular area or using a particular roadway segment. So for example, let's take the suburban town of Summit, New Jersey. You can see that kind of outlined in the yellow polygon underneath all those blocks there. Each of these blocks, it's a 1 kilometer square grid, represents the relative volume of work locations of devices that are within that town. So you can see there's kind of a bimodal distribution here. Many are in the town center, but also given some its proximity to NJ Transit and the express service into the city, many commuters are working in Manhattan, which you can kind of see in that circled oval there on the right. So this is for a typical spring day, weekday in 2019. We can run the same analysis for the corresponding months in 2020. And not surprisingly, you can see these work locations in Manhattan disappear, as many of those employees have now transitioned to a work from home environment. And so now you can see that this is kind of reflected in the larger percentage of work location within the town limits. So it's kind of a higher extrusion there right over Summit. So for this example, I did select a location where many workers likely have that option to work from home. But of course, many essential and frontline workers don't have that same flexibility, while others are unfortunately even furloughed, unemployed. And this could be a great tool it's very useful to understand which communities and which populations are being disproportionately impacted by the effects of COVID-19. Particularly in the New York City metro area, as some individuals are leaving the city while others remain. So at StreetLight, we have a relatively new feature. It's called Top Routes, and this allows you to look at the routing of all vehicular trips, branching out upstream or downstream from a location. So you can see at left there, the Queens Midtown Tunnel, and you can basically see all of the volume roadway segments are extruded upwards to give you a sense of the relative proportion of those inbound trips into Manhattan that turn left or right onto the different avenues in New York. And then you can also see on the right here, Top Routes can also provide the paths between a given origin destination pair. And this can be used to quantify, cut-through movements or determine, detour patterns in response to a roadway closure. And this is something that might even be more prevalent now in some jurisdictions, as DOTs are using these lower traffic volumes on roadways to justify and fast track some of those deferred capital improvement projects and maintenance projects. So the example at right kind of visualizes the path. So if you're looking at trips from the arrow on the right side there, they're coming from the Outer Bridge crossing, and they're basically destined for southbound trips on Garden State Parkway. But last November, the entrance ramp, you'll see that marked with the X there, was actually closed for a couple of weeks for construction. So what you're seeing here, if you kind of look to the left of the screen, you see all those different diversion patterns. You can see all the different detours that travelers were taking to kind of loop at different exits to find that best detour path. So StreetLight now offers multimodal analytics for bicycle and pedestrian trips, and we're really excited about this. And as anyone who's waited in a long line recently to purchase a new bike or to get one serviced, can attest, there certainly seems to be more people out and about kind of biking recreationally, and it's certainly possible that some travelers may even consider changing their commute mode once they return to working from the office. And furthermore, many cities have modified or closed their streets to provide kind of safe areas for people to walk and to bike. So our multimodal analytics can be used to kind of map the bicycle or pedestrian activity, whether that's to a roadway or to the trail network, to kind of understand utilization. It could be pre and post COVID. Also to identify gaps in the network where you may have a lot of activity, but not the corresponding non-motorized infrastructure. And then finally, you can overlay this data with vehicle ADT as well as crash data to assess the kind of exposure rate to collision for cyclists and pedestrians. And then you'll see, our data resources can also be used to quantify pedestrian mobility within a city or region. So the chart at right there is showing pedestrian activity at a small grid level in New Haven during a typical weekday in 2018 and 2019. These multimodal data are available now for the first half of 2020, and they're updated regularly. So, of course, you can run before and after analyses to quantify the impacts of COVID on mobility in your community. And then finally, I'll finish with a plug here. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, Pam and I are actually going to be presenting in October 20th, at the New Jersey Transaction Conference, and we'll be discussing bicycle travel trends pre and during COVID. So again, thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back over to Pam.